The MVP ladder comes out every week. I think as we get further along in the season, these are going to become more meaningful. They just released theirs recently. And number 1 was Jokic. Number 2 was Giannis. Number 3 was Tatum. Number 4 was SGA. And number 5 was Cat. I think
Mets
having...
got Klay Holmes. Apologies.
The Mets?
That's got Klay Holmes.
Fuck.
I think having an MVP conversation right now is pretty dumb just because we're so early in the season. But let's just treat this as if the votes are finalized this week. We need to pick MVPs this week, how all the standings are. Basically, everything is concrete at this point in time. Who would your MVP be?
3 years, 38. That's a steal. They're going to make him a starter.
You stole him. Who, Cole? I'm sorry.
Holmes going to be starting.
Klay Holmes.
Yes.
No way. If I had to say MVP, are we back in best in the world combos, Riv?
No.
Riv, are we back in best in the world combos?
No shot.
Not a shot?
Yeah, no shot.
Talking about Giannis.
Yeah, I'm talking. I mean, there's only one person I would put in there.
He's just clearly better than Giannis.
And I get where it's coming from. I mean, you take Jokic off the court, the Nuggets are legitimately unwatchable. They're horrifically bad. With that said, I would make Jokic my MVP, but it is kind of boring, understanding. But to not try and steer away and just try and sound different, Jokic is the MVP for what happens when he's off the court. You understand how valuable he is to the team. Now, what stands out is, like, I think of like the plus minus when they're on and off, and immediately Joel Embiid comes to mind in that playoff series versus the Knicks. But you watch this season with the Nuggets, when Jokic is off the court, the offense dies. Everything about the success for the Nuggets is non-existent. When he's there, he has to carry. I've seen what's been going on in Milwaukee, and I see the improvement that Giannis has made to his mid-range, and it's really helped add to their offensive firepower. And of course, now their defense is starting to click. You're getting help from your role players, but where it begins and ends is with Giannis. He's shooting 62% from the field. He is the second most dominant player in NBA history. He is unbelievable in what he's been able to do this season. When you add the mid-range jumper to his game, especially at this efficient of a clip, you're seeing him be one of the best players in the game, one or two, whether it's Jokic or him. But if I had to say my MVP, I'd give it to you.
So Giannis is the second most dominant player ever?
Yes. Unless we count LeBron.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, well.
I would count MJ.
It was Jordan's
number one is Shaquille O'Neal.
I was counting guys. Like,
but Shaq is deemed the most dominant because he scored in one fashion.
I know. Just
I'm going down. Yeah. I'm fucking beating your ass down low.
Since you said second ever, I'm just like, damn.
No, and Giannis, although he's added, you know what? That's a very fair statement to make. I know saying Jokic is
more
up
dominant
there for more dominant. I hear where you're coming from, but Giannis is so. I'm getting downhill. I'm getting to the basket.
Is more dominant.
You
than
cannot
Joker.
stop me.
Yeah. If you're saying in just one fashion, then okay.
That's really what I mean.
Joker has more than that, but still, most of his stuff is going to be around the rim.
But that's
but isn't dominated? I mean, I think what you're alluding to is just like a paint
presence.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Physically imposing was a better phrase.
I don't know. Why did they give Shaq the dominant tag?
He's both.
In which way?
You couldn't stop him.
But agree. I don't think you can stop Giannis.
I think you stop the Joker.
I don't disagree. But there's so many players you can't stop.
Can't stop
That's
LeBron.
reality.
It's because he was just you know what I'm saying?
Giannis is one of the strongest players ever.
So
Shaq's won for a reason.
MVP criteria is an interesting discussion to me because I can acknowledge Jokic is having the best season of his career right now.
Yes.
Without a doubt. They are the number one offense with him on the court. They are the worst offense in the NBA when he's off the court. They are comically bad. Their depth is comically bad. And with Jokic off the court, it really bleeds into what the product that we're watching. But last year, him winning the MVP, I didn't think he had the best season last year.
I think Luka was MVP.
They gave Jokic the MVP because he had the best numbers on one of the best teams in the West. The Nuggets won 57 games. They were tied with OKC. The best numbers on the best team was really Jason Tatum, but Jokic had better numbers than Tatum, and they were also close to a 60-win team. Luka didn't get it because the Mavericks were a 50-win team, even though he averaged 34, 9, and 9, and he missed 12 games and it went 4-8 in those games. So it was clearly, you saw that when he was on the court, the Mavericks, they didn't win games. So last year I thought Luka was the MVP. And now this year I see that Jokic is the MVP and he's having the best season. I'm not going to disregard that. But it feels like the criteria is changing based off what Jokic does. Like if Jokic is the best numbers or one of the best teams, he wins it. We saw him win it as a 6th seed when you had Giannis averaging 30, you had Embiid averaging 30, and yeah, what he did with the lack of supporting cast, you have to acknowledge it. So I'm not trying to rob Jokic of any MVPs. I'm just saying the criteria is changing a little bit when it comes to Jokic.
It's also about Luka.
No, I do agree with him. Last year,
It's
the
not
MVP
about
was Luka.
And the reason why it's not about Luka, because yes, last year, I think the MVP was Luka. And I
Agreed.
think he should have won
Last
the
year,
MVP.
it should have went to SGA.
I think
don't
that's
hate
a
that.
great
If we're
argument.
playing-
If we're playing the best player and the best team.
But I'm not doing that. I'm not doing
No, I'm saying
that.
like when he said, I forgot, you said
Jason
somebody.
Tatum. He said Jason Tatum was the best player on the,
you
Best
said,
numbers on one of the
you
best
said,
teams,
yeah,
yes.
the Joker was last year best numbers
But
on
that's
the
the
best
thing,
team.
Riv,
so.
is that Jokic and SGA, they had the same record, team record, and Jokic averaged 27, 10,
no,
and
didn't
10
OKC
essentially.
win 60 games last year?
They won the same amount of games last year.
I fucking felt like they won 60
Denver
games.
and OKC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So it's like, but Luka like averaged 34, 9, and 9. Like this year, if the MVP discussion like ended this week, and this is the conversation we're basing it off of, I don't think Luka's the MVP. I think it's Jason Tatum or SGA.
I disagree with both. I think it's Giannis.
But why though?
I think
Agreed.
what- I
I'm
think
fine with
I think
that.
it's Joker.
It's a 2-man race in my opinion. It's Joke or it's Giannis.
I think they've been playing the best. But I think SGA, no Chet for a majority of the season. They're still first in the West.
I can hear that.
Isaiah
Yep.
Hartenstein just
Absolutely.
coming back.
Yep.
SGA is averaging 30, 6 and 6, doing what he normally does on great efficiency. And then Jason Tatum, like I feel like nobody's really talking about the season he's having. And the Celtics are second in the East, only behind the Cleveland Cavaliers. All I'm saying is that I understand that Jokic and Giannis are having all-time seasons. But I wonder if they finish with the 6th seed, if the MVP will go to them, or if it will go to somebody else that has a higher seed and great numbers. Because last year, I thought that's how they voted on it. I thought they said, okay, the Nuggets are winning a lot. Jokic has great numbers. We'll give it to him. And they didn't actually give the award to the player who had the best season.
I will, and last thing I'll say, I apologize. I know I spoke a lot, but the MVP criteria changed with LeBron James. Whether you guys want to hear that or not, you guys know basketball. It's the truth. LeBron James changed the way that people vote for most valuable player. I still believe that Derrick Rose has one of his MVPs at his crib. I think that James Harden has LeBron James MVP at his crib. And I think that even the 2021 where Giannis was the most valuable player in the shortened season, I think that Giannis has his MVP at his crib. They changed that because they were tired of it. Now Jokic is here, and now people are under the same impression, or we're just going to give it to this guy every single year. But since I'm a guy who says LeBron should be a 6-time, 7-time MVP, I have to keep the consistency the same. Jokic is the best player in the league. I can hear Giannis because of what he's been doing, especially given, like we've mentioned, you take both of them off the court, both of these teams are going to bleed terribly. But when you're the best player, and you are the most valuable player, regardless of seeding, in my opinion, unless you're not in the playoff picture. If you're a top 6 seed and your team makes the playoffs and your impact is when you're on the court, you're number one offense. When you're off the court, you're dead last offense. That's when it needs to trump, oh, you've won this award 3 of the last 4 years. We're tired of giving it to you. When you're the best, you're the best.
I think it's both. Like my criteria, majority of it would be who is the best player in the NBA. Because as much as, of course, I'll sit up here and vouch for Tatum, Giannis and Jokic are on a different level right now.
Easy.
They're where they are playing individually and impacting the game. It's at a higher level than Tatum. I just think they're in a tier of their own right now. And Giannis, I mean, Jokic is having such good of a season that we're just kind of overlooking what Giannis is doing. The fact that he's been able to actually have a mid-range jump shot this year, and it's like not even really talked about, just like, oh, that's cool. Like that doesn't open up a completely different part of his game because we know how dominant he could be in the paint. So number one, I think, is still who is the best player, who is putting up. I don't care if you look at eye test, raw numbers, advanced numbers. I think all of that should be taken into account when we're talking about the MVP. And right now, it would be Jokic. The other, like, 20 to 25% is your team's success. Because if Jokic is having this historic of a season, but you're the 8th seed, even in a loaded West, there has to be something a little off there. Maybe it's injuries. There could be a lot of different things. But if you're not translating that to winning, you're going to get knocked down. Because, listen, like LeBron, for example, I agree. He should have won more MVPs. It's not like LeBron, the reason he didn't win MVP is because the fucking Cavs or the Heat or something was like the 7th seed one year, right? Like he was constantly top of the East. So it definitely plays a part in it. But unless Boston or the Thunder do something historic as a team. I'm talking like touching close to 70 wins, number one offense, number one defense, like really going out there and playing some of the best team basketball we have seen, I would still give it to one of those two guys because they're just on a different level than the rest of the league right now.
I think the problem with the conversation is, and I agree, I think team success matters. I think there's just certain historical moments can happen where it can propel you from that 6, 7, or 5 seed and get you an MVP. Two examples: Westbrook triple-double, the Joker triple-double.
Sure.
You know, you want to do a triple-double that's historic, hasn't been done in so long. They can bypass it if your team is really bad and they know you're basically the backbone of the team. There's other moments where you have the LeBron fatigue where, you know, you've won it multiple times, but then you have this different story, this different player who, you know, D Rose, for example, team was kind of mid offensively without him. They won 60 games. They kind of shocked the world. You kind of get that OKC tax where SG averaged 30, you become the number 1 seed, stuff like that. The new kid on the block, right? So I don't think it's hard to really have a criteria, a set one. I think it really is just, what do you think is better? Do you love to over exceed expectations as a player, put up these gaudy numbers, and your team is a 6, 7 seed, but you do so much that if you weren't there, they wouldn't even be at that spot? Or do you love who's the best player on the best team in the league, who's been putting up those nasty numbers, or or other factors? Like, it's really just what criteria do you want to bring to the table? Do you think that brings more value? And we have multiple, like, in history, like even before LeBron, you know, I felt like Kobe should have probably won more MVPs. Shaq should have won more MVPs. MJ probably is another one like LeBron who probably should have 8 or 9 MVPs. Bird should have more MVPs. Like, there's always that when you get that at that level in your game, like LeBron is and stuff like that, they're always going to find a way to not give you everything you need or everything you want. Because realistically, LeBron's been the best player in the league probably before like last 2 years for like a decade. It's been same thing with MJ. He was the best player in the league for like a decade. Bird and Magic were 1A, 1B for damn near a decade. Kareem, like 10, 12 years, best player in the league. So those top guys, obviously you can't give it to them every year. But I think for me this year, it's Giannis. I think just not only in the improvement of his game, but this Bucks team was not good probably like 3-4 weeks ago. You know, and he upped his level. He upped his game on both ends of the floor. I mean, like you mentioned, Adele's. Him just randomly getting a mid-range shot at 30 and nobody says a word about it, or just we kind of just like, cool. Like, it's crazy to me. And we have like, Giannis is pretty much, he's in the media. Like, this isn't somebody who's, you know, not fond of the media, doesn't talk a lot, you know, doesn't get all the interviews and the commercials. So this is a high-profile top 3, you know, player in the league. And we're just ignoring the fact that this dude is shooting over 47% from the mid-range. You know, this dude is still getting to the paint at will. The athleticism hasn't looked to slow down defensively. He's still that type of guy that can, you know, protect the rim and be that transition demon that you want him to be. The playmaking continues to improve every year. I mean, the only flaw in his game is the three-point shot, and now he doesn't even need to take it because that mid-range is there. Now you really can't guard. So I think with Giannis, and of course the post-game continues to improve. I think for me, Giannis, you know, is the MVP. I can hear other arguments for sure. I think the problem with team success is it's so early into the season that team success is fluctuating. Because I think Denver right now has 13 wins.
They're
or
the
something
8th
like
seed.
Yeah, and Milwaukee's 2 wins below them.
They're
like,
the 5th seed.
Yeah, it's like, so it's like the outside of Cleveland and maybe Boston, everybody's pretty much right there with each other. I mean, do we have to find the MVP now for the Houston Rockets? You know, do we have to find MVP for Memphis because they're at the top of the West? You know, do we have to sit here and go lie and say Donovan Mitchell's been the MVP because their team has 20 wins? You know, I don't think we should do that. So I think team success at this point, still a little bit too early. So you really got to just, if you want to have this conversation, look into the numbers on a team that's still relatively winning. And for me, that's Giannis.
My issue with it is just the criteria seems to be inconsistent, because I think the criteria should be simple. Who's been the best player statistically this year in the NBA? And I feel like every other year, that's not how the criteria is. Sometimes it's who's been the best, but this guy has the best numbers, but man, they've only won 50 games. So no, he can't be MVP. Like, there are players that every year get disqualified from being MVP if they're not as high as a 3 seed. And now we see the Nuggets right now is the 8th seed. They lost to the Mavericks with no Luka, by the way, when Jokic was playing. And this is not about
always
Luka.
comes back.
This is more
I'm trying
about
to tell you, man.
Jokic, because I think he's the one that's been dominating the MVP landscape as he should. He's the best player in the world. In 2022, he was a 6th seed. They won 48 games. We understand what happened that year.
This was an elite season.
We understand what happened that year when, no
team
Jamal
sucked.
Murray, no Michael Porter Jr.
That Monte Morris,
Facundo,
Compazzo.
yeah,
This year, Jokic averaged 27, 14, and 8. All these other 3 players I'm about to mention, they were a better seed, and they had similar numbers. Embiid averaged 31, 12, and 4. 68 games he played. Giannis averaged 30, 12, and 6. He played 67 games. Luka averaged 28, 9, and 9, and he played a similar amount of games to Jokic as well. All these players had similar numbers. They had better team success, yet the award went to Jokic. And I understand the narrative and the storyline as to why it happened. And then last year, I didn't think Jokic had the best season. And then this year, I do think he's having the best season. But now it's like, okay, last year, winning mattered. You had to be a top 3 seed. But this year, oh no, look at what they're doing. It doesn't really matter like that. It's like, look at what other dudes did in their seasons that didn't win it. Like, I remember still when Giannis won the MVP over James Harden, when James Harden was looking to go
36,
back-to-back. And I'm not going to disagree that Giannis had a spectacular season because he did. But James Harden had a historic season. And the reason why Harden didn't win MVP was because of a couple game difference, even though Harden dealt with more injuries. Chris Paul was hurt. Clint Capella was hurt. And he was doing things that we haven't seen since Wilt Chamberlain. Like, he was on that much of a scoring tear. It's one of the best scoring seasons in NBA history. And it's not going to get remembered because the criteria that year was production and wins.